Sigue en sintonía de nuestra programación.
Ahora empieza su programa, el show del doctor Roy Aranda. Temas sobre los efectos que tiene la separación de los niños de sus padres, traumas que afrontan los indocumentados, violencia doméstica, el porqué de la violencia en las escuelas. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
And we have what actually I believe will be a almost fun, if not certainly useful program today, because we are going to be focusing, the title of the show for today is Reinventing Ourselves, Challenges as the Nation Reopens. And in Spanish, está intitulado Reinventándonos, Desafíos a Medida que la Nación Reabre. So I think that we have a lot of positive things to say despite the fact that we are in a pandemic era. So I'm really hoping that you'll walk away with some good advice, and we also have a number of photos to share towards the end of the show that we hope will be somewhat delightful and humorous and fun, and give you some sense of what people are doing in order to cope and to better their lives as they go forward during this pandemic. I will also share that unbeknownst to my guest, Dr. Peter Canaris, because I just figured it out moments ago, today I'm celebrating the 40th show. So, 40th show, that has to have some significance, right, Peter? Some significance, show number 40?
Indeed, indeed.
Okay. And also as a real special day today is that I'd like to share with you that Dr. Peter Canaris, who is a psychologist and good friend of mine going back many, many years, he is a consultant. You'll see his name appear under the credits when we open up the first slide. He also was my first guest. You appeared on show number 1. I don't know if you remember, but you were a guest on show number 1. So here we are 39 shows later. And almost surreal is that it is raining outside. So I caution the viewers, espero que no perdamos la electricidad, that we don't lose our electricity and the power, because it looks like it might start storming any moment. So without further ado, what I wanted to let the viewers know is that the show is being televised, not televised, it is being televised, it's being recorded on YouTube right now. And by tomorrow, the recording will be available on Tribuna TV's website, Vimeo, Facebook, and probably on other electronic platforms. I encourage viewers who would like to take photographs of some of the content of the show. There are questions that Dr. Canaris Peter and I will be focused on for dialogue, for discussion. But, I'm not going to I'm going to put them up, but then afterwards we're not going to have them. We're just going to be having a dialogue. So feel free to take photos, or if not, then wait until you have the recording and you can take screenshots, okay? So without further ado, por favor, Oscar, tú eres miembro de este equipo. Oscar has been with me from show number 1 also. So, Oscar, puedes saludar a todo el mundo.
Hola, hola.
And why don't you let's put slide number 1 to start, and then I'm going to introduce you momentarily, Peter, and then we'll get into the formal program. So I wanted to, as I've been doing, for those of you who watch the show, ustedes que miran el show, sabrán que siempre tengo una introducción y una dedicación. You know that I have an introduction and a dedication. So reinventing ourselves challenges as the nation reopens, the threat of COVID-19 contagion, and the overwhelming consequences of the pandemic have been dominating our existence worldwide since February of 2020. We were probably first aware of it, I believe, in 2020, even though there were people that were aware of it earlier than that. But I don't think it hit mainstream until about February of this year. People have been experiencing varying degrees of trauma and a multitude of challenges. Society must make adjustments and modifications to how we live and function during a COVID era that continues to evolve as parts of the country have reopened and as increased rates of contamination are reported in approximately 40 states. The 40 states was earlier in July. I'm guesstimating that we're still in that area, if not even more. One thing is clear: as people reinvent their existence, they have undertaken steps to adjust. We've been forced to adjust. Some good and adaptive, which is what we are going to focus on, the good. Others not so good and maladaptive. Okay, so we want to distinguish good adaptation, healthy adaptation, from maladaptive and not so healthy kinds of adjustments during this pandemic. My guest, Dr. Peter Canaris, and I, we're going to talk about how we are handling ourselves during this pandemic and how we are reinventing ourselves. And momentarily, we're going to talk about that word, reinventing ourselves. It was very easy for me, a piece of cake, to decide who to dedicate this show to. So, in essence, I'm dedicating the show to all of you, to all of the viewers, everybody. You know, why wouldn't I? So, so this is really the dedication. And Peter, I'm going to just give a little brief background about yourself, and then you know, you can say a couple of words as well. So Dr. Peter Canaris holds a doctorate in clinical school psychology from Hofstra University. You know, I taught at Hofstra for about 16 years, right? You were not my student. We were.
No. Roy, I was in elementary school.
I would have been ancient history.
Yes.
But he's a New York State licensed psychologist, postdoctoral fellow of the Albert Ellis Institute in New York City. Albert Ellis, he's great. He was great. I was there too. So, Dr. Canaris' work specializes in the evaluation and treatment of patients with both acute and chronic disability, geriatrics, and issues of sexuality. For the past 20 years, he has consulted in skilled nursing facilities and subacute units, helping people dealing with issues relating to pain and disability. He has been honored for his work in public education by Suffolk County Psychological Association and the New York State Psychological Association. He has served as the New York State Psychological representative to the American Psychological Association's Council. That was like, what, about a 6-year stretch, I think, that you did?
No, I was from 2015 through 17, a 3-year stretch.
Okay. And he's recognized as a distinguished fellow of the New York State Psychological Association. Dr. Canaris has directed 2 group psychotherapy practices and currently directs Canaris Psychological Services in Smithtown, New York. Later in the show, for viewers who want more information or would like to contact either me or Dr. Canaris, and or some professional organizations, I have those available. As always, the last slide, which will be resources. Peter, so say hello and a word of introduction, and then we'll start with what it means to reinvent ourselves.
Well, thank you, Roy, and thank you for inviting me back to a show that hopefully, as you suggested before, can be kind of upbeat and positive. These are not times really that make us feel upbeat very easily. So much is going on, from the pandemic to civil unrest, and just it's affected people's lives in so many ways. And hopefully we can share some ideas that might be helpful to people in coping and also feeling better about things.
Well, we'll see how well they feel after they see photos of you and me dressed down a bit.
Well, not sure.
A little bit later on. Oscar, por favor, el primer slide. Slide 1. I'm going to put the slide up momentarily. Just read it briefly. and then we'll take it down. And Peter, I'm going to ask you to take point on what it means to reinvent ourselves. So basically, of course, we're all aware that COVID is a terrible disease. It's taken a huge toll. I don't need to repeat that and dwell on that too much. In fact, I'd really rather focus more on positive aspects of going forward with our lives in a good way. How do we cope? Coping should always be something that is healthy, adaptive, positive. There are things we can't control, but do the best we can to cope. For instance, some people cannot control if their boss had to shut down place of employment, or if they are unemployed and or have to work from home. I can't control the weather outside. There's things that are obviously beyond the reach of all of us. But nonetheless, we do the best that we can to cope with the things that we can't control. On the other hand, there are things that are under our control, and it's something that we can maximize. We can certainly put that to use and help address other things, and really maybe strengthen some of the other aspects of our lives that we don't have direct control. It's sad when the things that are under our control, we relinquish that control, and that's what I meant when I say that some of us, unfortunately, our ways of coping are maladaptive and not positive. Are maladaptive, yeah. We must distinguish positive, healthy coping from negative, maladaptive coping. Underneath, I encourage you to take a photograph. This is a COVID-19 sort of like a sphere of adaptation. What do I want to be during COVID-19? So at the far left, it's the fear zone, the early responses to COVID, the shock, the fear, the learning zone, starting to try things on, trying to see what works, what doesn't work. Growth zone on the far right. Those are all the things that we have been able to do that have worked well for us, or have had the best possible result for us. So I wanted you to at least see that sphere. Puedes sacar el slide. Yo te dejaré saber cuando pone el 3, okay? So Peter, thoughts about that, reinventing? To me, that's like the crux of the name of our show.
Indeed. And a point I might make, Roy, is that as we think about coping, with what we're confronted with these days and beyond, it's not a all or none thing. It's not a question of, well, gee, I'm a good coper or I'm a poor coper. People that are naturally inclined to cope well, have their moments of struggle. It's not a all or none thing. It's a process of trying to kind of move the needle to where more generally you are coping well rather than poorly. It's when you get stuck in a rut of not coping very well that more major problems can develop. So it's important to think of it as not an all or none, but as a process that you want to move it toward better coping rather than not.
Right, and not to feel that if you have a failure or a setback, you're yes. a loser. Yes. It involves a lot of honest self-reflection,
yes.
willingness to hear what others are saying and not respond immediately either in anger or defensively or becoming paranoid.
Yes.
But listening, like what is it that, they are saying? Maybe they're right. Maybe I do this. Maybe it's time for me to look at what they're saying, and also to reflect on our own needs, because they change, they evolve. No, it's not necessarily going to stay put. Throughout this pandemic, I've evolved in terms of what's important to me, and how I work and reach out to my own patients has changed. my method of communicating with them, dealing with them, what I want to hear from them, injecting humor in some of my sessions with them, the methodology that I have for getting records from them and communicating with them so that they can see some of the documents that are important to them. This has been evolving, and I'm very delighted to see that my own skills have been evolving. I'm still trying to figure out how when I get a phone call and I'm on DoxyMe, how not to have that phone call kill my audio, because afterwards my audio's gone. I have the video, the audio's gone, and the microphone says that I'm unmuted, but it's not true because I'm muted. So it's a glitch, right? It's still a learning experience. Let's focus on some of the questions. We're going to quickly go through the next two slides just to show the viewers the types of questions that I'll be asking, that we'll be focusing on, and some of the suggested coping strategies. Then we'll dispense with slides and just have a conversation. So, por favor, Oscar, slide 3. I tried to organize this with Peter's help in a way that that covers various aspects of who we are, of how we are, of the essence of our being. So we're going to look at how the pandemic affected our mind, our thought processes, our body, physically how we feel, and our spirit, that part of us that deals with compassion and caring and wanting to share, and feelings, religious feelings, spiritual feelings, camaraderie, that kind of feeling and behavior. How can we help the mind and emotions? We're going to take a look at ways to reinvent ourselves. We're going to focus on how we think. Rational thinking, problem solving, acceptance, not resignation. We're going to look at things that calm the mind, such as prayer, meditation, mindfulness, and I'll leave it up to, when we talk about it, I'll leave it up to Peter to give some examples about it. Deep breathing, relaxation exercise. On this show, we've talked quite often about relaxation exercise. We'll revisit it just briefly. El número 4. The next major section, caring for our bodies, keeping nutrition. You've heard we talk about this before. Exercise is essential. Stretching, walking, dancing, returning to medical care. And the emphasis, or the word returning to medical care, suggests that very possibly because of sheltering at home for such a long time for so many people, and for people who may have been afraid to go out to see their doctors. Either the doctors were not seeing patients because they were closed, or they were just having teletherapy sessions, or they simply were not open, or patients were afraid to go out because they might get contaminated, and they were horrified or mortified at the idea of going to hospital. So the notion of returning to medical care is we need to take care of ourselves. We need to stay healthy. What feeds the soul? Gratitude, helping others, volunteering to do things, even though you can't maybe physically go doing volunteering, even though there are people that are doing volunteering outside with masks and with appropriate distancing. There are people who are doing volunteering virtually. You can still do donations and fundraisers virtually. Feeling and sharing love, religious activities. Many of my patients actually, they have been going to church with proper distancing, one aisle closed, one aisle open, and sitting far apart, and limited number inside the church. But I've had many of my patients actually attending religious activities through FaceTime, through YouTube, and just through the telephone sessions with other members of the parish. Appreciating nature. I'm a big nature lover, as I know that that Peter is. So getting out there and being one with nature, I think that that's wonderful. Some activities to pursue, take photos. I like to take a lot of photos. I think some of you have seen this in the photos that I've made in my presentation. Reconnecting, reaching out, reestablishing relationships, making sure that relationships stay tight. Watching TV and videos, more comedy, less news. Modernly, you turn onto the news, and so much of it is so negative that it becomes, it's overwhelming. You start desensitizing, and you become indifferent. And I don't want people to become indifferent to real important aspects of the news. So you have to be varied. Vary your shows, limit your news consumption to the essential. Pets. The last show that we did, we had my veterinarian, and it was a wonderful, beautiful, delightful show on pets. Pets are wonderful. They're wonderful members of the family, and a lot of people, I believe the ratio is like 5 or 6-fold now since the pandemic that people are actually adopting, purchasing pets. Listening to music, hobbies, stuff that you used to do in the past and you're not doing anymore. New hobbies. What are you doing now? Are there things that interest you now that you can do? Reading, cooking, taking online courses, re-exploring ourselves through photos and memorabilia. I've been walking through a lot of my photos. We're going to put a photo there that Peter will identify later, which is like really wonderful. It's almost like having the past come back into our present, and that brings meaning to who we are and what our essence is, and I think that's important. Puedes sacar el slide. So Peter, that's a lot of food for thought there. So basically, why don't we just start with at the top, focusing on the thinking. What does it mean? What is rational thinking, problem solving? What does that sort of mean?
Yeah, well, Roy, starting there, rational thinking, what does it mean? It tends to be when the thought process helps us to cope and helps us to deal with our emotions, as opposed to more irrationally generating dysfunctional emotions, feelings of upset, anger, depression, guilt, that weigh us down. These times that we're living in, dealing with the pandemic, the stress is so great, it stimulates us to think irrationally, to panic, to think negatively about what's going on. And that can just make things worse very often. So we want to pause and sort of examine our thinking. And a good clue in doing that is if I'm feeling strong negative emotions, if I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling anxious, let me slow down and examine, what am I thinking? What's going on in my head? A good way of doing that is just taking a piece of paper and jotting down what I'm feeling, followed by, what are my thoughts? Am I saying that this is awful and terrible, and I will never get past this, and I'll never get well? I want to examine those thoughts. I want to challenge them and see if I can change them to more positive but realistic thoughts that will enable me to cope better.
And what you say, the coping, the enabling people to cope better suggests that the thought doesn't exist in a vacuum. You have the thought, and as a result of the thought, there's going to be some behavior that flows from it. And of course, if it's a rational thought, the idea we're going to look at behaviors that are more adaptive and constructive. I'm more concerned about the irrational thoughts that lead to possibly self-destructive kinds of behaviors, or behaviors that might be destructive to others.
Yes, which then it can lead us to the next point on the PowerPoint, the problem solving. Okay, if I'm going to think clearly and logically to try to approach the problem that I'm faced with, to come up with some viable solution, I need to do that with a clear mind. I need to be able to do that thinking logically and not primarily emotionally. Now, I'll sometimes talk about how do we successfully drive a car if we've got reason and emotion in the car. Well, we're going to need them both, okay? But you really want reason behind the wheel and emotion sitting alongside or in the back seat in order to get to where you hope to be, where you hope to arrive to. And that you can look at that as a sort of a methodology for being able to solve problems effectively, doing it with a clear mind by calming yourself down in thinking rationally.
So the smart thing to do is at least to take a moment, like a brief break and just think something through. You don't want to drive under the influence of emotion, whether it's depression, nervousness, or anger. All of them can cause problems when you're driving. You also don't want to post a message on social media that later on you regret because you posted it too quickly and you said something in anger, and it's very hard to take back. So you have to avoid impulsivity. You have to slow down, take a deep breath, and it's especially important if you're dealing with intimate relationships because you don't want to be in a situation that, say, you risk having something that might escalate into a domestic kind of an issue with pejorative consequences. You don't want to take it that far. So it's good to be able to just push back a little bit.
Indeed. And which brings us to the next point, which you alluded to earlier, and that feeling of not being able to control circumstances. Things feel out of control. We don't have the normal sense of control that we have over our daily lives before all of this started, the pandemic and the like. So, what happens? We need to reach a point of acceptance that we don't have that kind of degree of control that we would really like or that we would want. Now, reaching acceptance is not resignation. Resignation in the sense of I'm giving up, I'm in despair, I feel I have no control over life. Well, while we might not have the level of control that we want, we still have influence. We can influence ourselves toward better behaviors, toward more constructive actions. We can positively influence the people that we have in our life if we approach it with calmness and kindness and in useful ways. So we could still maximize our influence and recognize that we're in fact not powerless over our situation. It makes a difference in how we respond.
Right. Well, actually, I think that it's important to point out that in some ways, if not many ways, the unfortunate circumstances of the pandemic have led to people making changes for the better that actually in some areas are better and more interesting and have opened up new directions and maybe new opportunities for them that they did not have before and that perhaps they would not have had before. Just as a very quick example, for me, I was not doing teletherapy sessions prior to the pandemic. It was always one-on-one, face-to-face. The interesting thing about doing teletherapy and doing a hybrid when things are better and when it's safer to go out and to go to doctor's offices, even if you're wearing a mask, and I certainly encourage everybody, do wear the mask, do listen to the expert, and do abide by social distancing if you really want to flatten this curve finally and catch up to where Europe is. But for me, doing in the future a mix of both, I think, will be ideal, because if a patient is sick, you can have a session through teletherapy. If the patient missed the appointment, I forgot, you can reschedule through teletherapy. If the patient had another appointment or something conflicting, or couldn't afford to pay the transportation to make it to the appointment, had nobody to drive them, terrible weather outside, horrible pain. I mean, all of these are factors that are non-factors when it comes to teletherapy, and the cost is minimal. So, that I see that as something positive, and I'm actually glad for that, and I plan to develop a hybrid approach, looking for down the road. Peter, what about the things that calm the mind, that spiritual piece, things to calm, well, no, not the spiritual, things to calm the mind. Some of it is spiritual.
Well, I think really what you're alluding to there is, though we've differentiated mind, body, and spirit, they're one. They're part of an overlap. And I think sometimes it helps us to be able to talk about it by making that differentiation. But they're so closely related, and we'll see things that we talk about now that will come up again in one of the other categories. So what calms the mind? We mentioned prayer, for instance. Now, again, that's for a person who is inclined toward religious belief, and maybe strongly or lightly religious, but we're finding, and there's some science behind it, people that embrace prayer do well with illness, do well with things like blood pressure, just physical kinds of responses, and obviously also can feel a great sense of comfort. And it's in my opinion, is very closely aligned to that next item that we list, meditation. Prayer and a meditative state, whether it is religiously based or not, I think function in many ways similarly and beneficially in calming the person's emotions, helping the person's physical state, and allowing them to clear-mindedly think about things and problem solve, as we were saying before. The next item, Roy, really everyday mindfulness. Mindfulness is a term we hear about all the time now, and sometimes it seems sort of remote or mystical. What is this thing, mindfulness? And it's really quite simply being calm and being in the present, in the moment, focused on something that you're experiencing with your senses. What you're seeing, hearing, feeling, could even be touching, tasting, and slowing yourself down to be able to be present with that experience, so that some of the noise that's going on in our minds and distressing us is slowly moves from the foreground to the background and has maybe a little bit less of a grip on us during that time. So mindfulness, we'll talk about other aspects of that going forward as well.
I was referring to with the nature, like becoming one with the nature. Yeah. So it's like putting yourself where you feel the breeze, and it's like you almost become the breeze. You see the sky, and you're lost in reverie in the sky. Yes. I'm a cloud watcher. I see a lot of Rorschach figures in the sky, and it's delightful. I mean, it's delightful.
That's a nature meditation, and that's something I know that you and I share as a particular way of relating to meditation and through nature. It's a natural. It's so easy to go in that direction, for us, and I think for many people. But there are other methods. We mentioned deep breathing and various active relaxation approaches, also consistent with a meditative, mindful approach. Just breathing and concentrating for a moment on your breath. Okay, and what I will do is I've learned to just think the words soft as I inhale, and slowly exhale, thinking the word belly. soft belly, soft belly on the exhale.
Yeah.
Doing that very slowly, more slowly than I did it just now to demonstrate, and doing it over and over for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you can really slow the system down and create an enhanced state of calm and relaxation. Just as there are other more active methods, using imagination. I once learned to with the imagination, to think of yourself as like a city building at night where all the lights are on, and then slowly go about turning the lights off one at a time, from your head slowly down to your toes. And going through a simple process like that can enhance and deepen a feeling of calm and relaxation. Then there's something called Jacobsonian relaxation, where you, again, go through various parts of the body. You hold your arm out straight, you tense your muscles for about 5 seconds, and then you breathe and relax. And you go through that kind of a process, again, from your forehead down through your neck, all the way down eventually to your toes, clenching and releasing over a 5 or 6 second period, every muscle group of your body, again, creating a profound feeling of calm and relaxation. So these are really, we're giving a short example of these, but these are techniques that people can use that can make a real difference in how they feel, in their emotions, and in a calming of the mind at the same time.
I know with the with the deep breathing, we've actually done exercises on the show, and I actually had Oscar in the past play a video clip in Spanish and a short video clip in English, and that is available. It's actually the recording is there if anybody just wants to look for it under Tribuna TV. It's archived there, but the exercises are there. But I always instruct my patients to take the deep calming breath, inhaling and exhaling out the mouth, and I add the suggestion to them that they are in a safe place, that it's their own personal, private, safe place, that nobody can interrupt them, nobody can penetrate the thoughts, nobody can control the thoughts, and that in this state, in this private, safe haven, they can control better their thoughts, they can control better their physical bodily sensations, aches and pains, and they can better control some of the emotional excesses. The anxiety, anger, depression seems to just ooze away. And it seems to work well, and it doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort to do it. And patients seem to derive some good benefit. What about our bodies? We have to take care of ourselves, and it's probably, I'm guessing that many of us, because of the sheltering in place, have gained weight. We haven't been jogging, we haven't been exercising, we haven't been running, maybe we've been overeating. So I think maybe that focusing on caring for our bodies is a good thing to talk about.
Without a doubt, Roy. Because this now, we move from the mind here to more of a focus on the body. And again, some of the things that you find there, starting really with nutrition. I know, when we're confined and our options are less than in more of a normal life, one of the ways we try to comfort ourselves is by eating. For many people are inclined to do that. And what do we eat? We eat comfort foods. Very rarely do we look to grab more vegetables at that time. But, normally it would be, sweets, starches, sugars, things of that kind. So, again, trying to have in your home healthier foods and being able to make choices that are better thinking of taking care of your body, not so much focused on only weight or appearance or things, diet, things like that. Those can be important, but to think of, I want to take care of my body and my well-being, and sort of to sustain myself and put myself in the very best position to have a strong immunity, to deal with some of the threats, to my health and well-being. And again, that starts with what's in the house and trying to make choices that respect the body and allow us to feel healthy and good and strong. And that can be different. And it might also mean looking up on the internet and finding an eating style or a diet that is good for you. I know for me, as a Greek American, my heritage, what resonates with me is a Mediterranean type diet, which is it's a healthy type of diet, with fish and vegetables and lots of olive oil and maybe some.
You mean some of the stuff we had, huh?
So I think the particular eating style that you have, you want to think about it. You want to think about what's healthy and also what resonates well with who I am and where I come from, and not be perfectionistic to say I've got to, I can never eat an Oreo cookie again, but rather to try to treat myself in moderation and make sure also that in terms of drinking, that I'm not overdoing, the wine or beer or liquor, that I can have some, but, we've seen, some excess usage now during the pandemic that, actually liquor stores are one of the businesses that have generally done fairly well. We want to be careful even of what we keep in the house, and that, we're able to, have a drink, but do it with some moderation.
This goes to education and even developing some cooking skills,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That would be a way of combining, as we move forward, bringing in that activity aspect. But again, regarding our bodies, okay, you mentioned before being confined and, gyms not being open or fully available. We're not able to work out perhaps in the usual way that we're accustomed to, but if we're physically able to walk, if we're able to get outside and keep our social distance and wear the mask, but just walking, particularly combining with what we were saying before, if we can walk around nature, if it's possible. It's not always possible. If I'm in the city, maybe I can walk on a city block and observe the buildings and look at other things, mindfully taking that in. But walking, and also, even if I'm limited in my ability to walk, stretching. Being able to just stretch can be a very healthy, beneficial thing, and that gets me moving.
While you're stretching, you're also breathing.
And you're also breathing.
You're filling up the lungs.
Correct.
With the breathing.
Absolutely true.
You and I both work with occupational and motor vehicle injury and other injury consultations. And, they're in pain. They have problems with their hips, with their knees, with their legs, with their shoulders, arms, necks, lower backs, and so forth. But we always advise them to try to do some exercise, some movement, whatever they can, and to tolerate it, and to try to increase it and develop it, while at the same time they're proceeding with their physical therapy and rehabilitation. So that even if you're in a confined area, you still are literally able to pick up and move around.
That's right. And certainly if there are injuries or illnesses or ailments to consider, consult your physician for, whatever you're planning to do to make sure it's okay and would not be contraindicated in any way. Which leads us to the next point, returning, on the topic of the body, returning to medical care, routine medical care, or specialty care if you've got a medical condition that understandably you've put off because of fears of the virus and inaccessibility, to get back to looking into taking care medically of what might be going on, because we're so focused on the virus and worries and concerns about that. We don't want to neglect other medical conditions that some of us have. We want to keep taking care of that aspect as well.
That are very real and very significant, and can certainly be very debilitating and also shorten lifespan. So in terms of quality of life, we've been around long enough now that we know about wearing a mask, we know about social distancing. You probably are aware at this point in time that you would make an appointment. It would be just you going in. They'll check your temperature. You're wearing a mask, doctor's wearing a mask. One or two other people might be in the waiting room keeping distances apart, and you're in and out. So really the risk is very, very, very minimal, and the benefit of it, your health, is immeasurable. So that becomes very important.
Indeed.
What about the soul? Food for the soul.
The soul. This is so important. Okay, because as psychologists, as you probably know, Roy, the name psychologist comes from the Greek. Okay, psyche. Okay, and ology. The study of the psyche, and we normally think of the psyche as the mind, but the psyche comes from the Greek, the word psyche, which transliterally means soul. We are studiers of the soul. So to remove that sense of soul from mind and body is really not possible. Okay, so how do we feed the soul? Well, some ways, there are many, but these are just a few expressions of gratitude. Now, that's probably strange for people who are struggling either with their health or have lost loved ones, or their jobs have been postponed or lost. This guy's telling me to be grateful. Okay, well, when we can find our way to some gratitude for things we've experienced positively in life, for things that are existing right now, even small things. Maybe my gratitude goes back to what we were saying before. I went out and I was able to spend a few moments observing a beautiful flower or a beautiful tree. That's a very small thing and in the moment. But as I'm able to experience gratitude for that, it takes me away from so much of the stress and so much of the sadness, the anger, and the upset that we feel about the other difficult things that may be going on in life. So being able to, we'll do this with patients at times, to daily generate a short list of things I am grateful for, either in the past or currently in my life, or hopes of my future. Getting a mindset of gratitude can be so healing and so beneficial to the soul, body, and mind.
A little thank you can go so far. When somebody hears a thank you, it melts away barriers, and an acknowledgement of the willingness to acknowledge a mistake goes just as far, if not further.
Indeed. And then kind of related to that is helping others. Okay? Yeah, the process, I think one of the things we observe and have known is the process of helping another person. My secret as a psychologist all of these years, and particularly the part of my career working in geriatrics, and working in helping people in subacute units who've gone through trauma, injury, or illness, is whatever little help I've tried to be to my patients, all right, I'm really there to learn from them how to live this life, how to manage my way through adversity. I will often thank them for the opportunity to spend time with them to learn these lessons that they have offered me. So that process of helping is a two-way street. You get more benefit yourself than actually whatever you're offering to the other person. And so how do we do that? How do you do it during a pandemic? Not so easy. Well, virtual volunteering. To use that internet that we're so involved with now. We're looking at each other now. I used to be in your studio. Now we're using the internet to be able to communicate. Well, there may also be volunteering opportunities that can be through the internet. That takes a little research looking into, or some that can still be in person, with distance and using masks, but to research it and to see how can I help.
The volunteering doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be financial, although certainly people with floods and fires and tornadoes and tragedies, they need financial. But I've seen, fundraisers for clothing, for winter clothes for people who didn't have any, for food, with the hurricanes, the devastation in Puerto Rico. I mean, they needed all sorts of supplies. That's giving. All of that is giving. Giving your time also to participate in an educational program such as this. That's also, as I see, virtual volunteering.
Indeed.
So, Peter, we have about 15 minutes, so I wanted to go over some of the activities to pursue just quickly.
Okay, if I may, though, before we do that,
sure.
I just want to touch on that next one of feeling love, if I could comment on that briefly.
Sure.
Okay, so feeling love.
Oscar's going to feel a lot of love for me when it's time to end.
Yeah,
because I'm going to look at him and give him. I'm going to give him the look of love, and he'll give me an extra He'll give me an extra 2 minutes.
What does it mean? Okay, well, again, being Greek, I've learned from the Greeks that they've got 3 words for love. They've got philia, which is the love of friendship. You and I have philia, imiste fili, we're friends, and there's a love to that friendship. There is eros, which is more the love of intimacy that you would have with your partner. Like sexuality could be part of that, sensuality. That's one avenue of love. And then there's agape. Agape is really the love of the world, the love of humanity, the love that we put out to others when we're walking to the store and we hold the door for them and we smile. So having a loving thought in your mind in any one of these 3 areas can be so fulfilling and healing and soulful.
It's a social love.
Yes. Oh, socially, exactly. Yes.
So we're gonna go over some of the. I'm just gonna recite some of the activities because the photos will actually show some of these activities in process. But taking photos, so you're about to see a whole bunch of them. Relationships, reconnecting. We've talked about that before. How important it is. If you haven't heard from somebody, reach out. Now's a good time. I've had people through. LinkedIn and other social media, they said, how have you been? It's been like 20 years. I said, wow, it's been that long. And it's like, it's surprising, but they took the effort to do that, and I appreciated that and responded. So I think that those kinds of things are important. Watching TV, I don't want to belabor on that. Movies that are entertaining, educational, religious in nature, spiritual, all sorts of kinds of movies. Focus less on the news. We got into that. Pets, mentioned that. Music, we've gone over that. Picking up new hobbies, you'll see a few in the photos. Reading, you have time now. Take the time to read. Take the time to go on the internet. Take the time to take online courses. A lot of them are free or very, very limited at cost, and some they may have really very limited or pro bono or low bono. Kinds of fee arrangements. Re-explore yourself. Now's the time to look through your old photo albums and old letters that you wrote and things that you have hidden in your drawers. Take them out. Take a look. This is where the past becomes part of your present. And when the past and present combine, that makes you more of a whole person. I think it's wonderful that when that happens and you rediscover yourself, and in rediscovering yourself, you're reinventing yourself. Let's look at some of the photos, and I'm going to have you respond to some of them. Oscar, is slide 5. So here is a somewhat down-dressed Peter. so Peter, what on earth are we looking at the top left?
Well, that is me, of course, with 2 of my grandchildren, young Joshua, who is 7.5, and Miss Charlotte, who is about to be 4 years old. And we're spending a little time together outdoors and just enjoying the day. And that other picture next to it is their pool. So there's a little swimming going on and just spending some time with Arabi, as we were saying before.
What's the middle left?
Well, the one
did I surprise you by putting that photo in?
Because that is a picture of you. You were talking about the past, Roy. That's a picture reflecting on the past, because that's my father. God bless him when he was with us, and that little one is that he's holding is the mother of Charlotte, who's on my lap in the picture above. And that little girl there is soon to be turning 40 years old. So time does march forward. But there is a line through that time, and the generations remain connected.
Okay. The one on the right, this is one of my sister's grandchildren. My sister is a medical doctor. And Riley, one of her granddaughters, she has many grandchildren, she wanted to help with the pandemic. Schools were closed, and she decided to start saving lives by having her little toys there wear masks. And she made the masks for them, and she's saving lives doing that. The bottom 3, puedes subirlo un poquito. Those are hobbies of mine. I collect coins and I collect stamps. I just wanted to show that to the viewers, things that you can do. You can collect coins, you can collect stamps, you can go to the post office and actually buy stamps. The Gregory Hines on the right, I got that from my own post office, and the PTSD was the first issue that came out pursuant to the pandemic. Sort of like acknowledging and recognizing the importance of mental health. El 6, por favor. So, top left, that's me. I didn't put it there to have the viewers see me wearing a Hard Rock Cafe T-shirt, which I do when I dress down every now and then. But the reason that I put it there is that hairstyle, the way you see me today, this is the hairstyle that my wife, Irma, who is Puerto Rican, Boricua, viva la Isla del Encanto. She is a registered nurse, a professional nurse, and she has become a quasi-professional hairstylist with a client of one. I'm exclusive clientele. She's a lot cheaper too than my professional hairstylist, but that's why I put it. The one in the middle is my son, who is pretty much your daughter's age. He had a surgical procedure. He's recovering. Of course, he wasn't too thrilled. He wasn't too thrilled to begin with about the staying in, sheltering in place, and now he's stuck in a hospital setting. So he's enjoying himself with one of his favorite hobbies, eating pizza, and he's got a big smile on his face because he just ravaged 4 slices of pizza. And that's David, and David was thrilled to know that I was going to show his photo. So this is for you, David. The one on the right, this is really interesting because this is in France. This is in Montpellier, France. And this is my older sister, my eldest sister. I have 2 older sisters. My eldest sister, who lives in France, these are her grandchildren, and you can see them around the table. And the table is set up that they're all working on computers. I mean, I thought it's so interesting. I haven't really seen this. So I'm guessing other parents do this. But it was so interesting to see how each child has his or her own computer, and they're all there sitting at the table, socializing and doing whatever they're doing off at the computer. So I wanted to put that down. The middle left is one of my offices, and I wanted to put it up because you might not be able to see it clearly unless you take a photo or a screenshot of it. But I actually have a plastic partition. There's a plastic partition on the desk, and I have done that obviously for purposes of PPE, of protective distancing, and the equivalent of wearing a mask. My patients, they are wearing a mask. I'm wearing a mask too. And the actual distance between the chair and where they sit is closer to 8 feet. But there's also that plastic partition on the desk. Some of the pictures that you see behind that are collectibles. Don Corleone and a couple of other Jaws, a couple of other places. I like to collect these things. The middle picture, this is actually from a patient who buys cars, restores them, and then puts them on the market to sell. And this is a 1956 T-Bird hardtop that I thought was absolutely stunning. So I wanted to show that that's something that a patient does. The one on the right, this is my niece who actually works in my office, Karen. That's her significant other, Christian's car. And you can see that he pretty much customized it with Boricua power and all those wonderful, artistic designs on the hood. Underneath to the left, that's a Ecuadorian patient, un fritado. The patient actually took a photo and sent it to me, and I wanted to share that. It's showing people doing cooking and having a time in the backyard, doing barbecues, creating meals, and spending time with family. The one on the right, I do have a wine collection, and these are some of the wines that I have. Peter was saying, drink under in moderation and so forth, and of course those bottles are still not fully consumed, Peter. They're waiting for more people. Ponme la 7. Estamos ya casi al final. Top left and middle, bird watching. There you have birds on the left, including, I believe, what are they called? The red one. What's the red one called? I forgot. I'll see if I remember.
Cardinal.
A cardinal. The one in the middle is a dove that decided to come and visit me at my waterfall and spend half the day there. I thought that was good luck. Far right was a visitor at my home too, like a spider, and you can see it's like a glistening spider web because I took that at 1 a.m. Middle left, picture through glass, looking at nature through the glass. Middle picture is a scene of the sky taken at night with special effects. The one on the right, that's Peter. That's from your garden.
Yes.
And the lower left is Peter, your something from Aruba, so it's making sandcastles.
Yes.
The one in the middle is my sister's youngest daughter and husband. They're building a vegetable what do you call it, a vegetable house that they finished constructing, and that's them doing the work. And Peter, you shared a picture there to the right, which I assume is that there's still places that we can go for walks.
Backyard, yes.
So that's your backyard. Well, you're definitely able to go for long walks there. Ponme la ocho is the resources. We're wrapping up. People have any questions, they can feel free to, there you see my business card on the upper left. Peter Canaris Psychological Services, you're on the right. Peter, you want to give a shout out, your phone number, in case it's not too clear on the card?
My office phone number is 631-807-4097.
Okay. New York State Psychological Association, I've promoted them before. They are the major association in New York State. There's the address, phone number, and website. The American Psychological Association is the parent of all of the state associations. I've also given you that in the past. There you have the address, phone number, website, and I also wanted to give a shout out to Suffolk County Psychological Association. I've been a member for years. I know you have, Peter, and I've given you the phone number there and also the website. They have a wonderful, wonderful listing of programs and activities. I encourage people to take a look at it. Puedo sacar a slide. Okay, so this is a wrap. Peter, any parting comments as we're finishing?
None other than my appreciation for you having me to visit once again, Roy. And I hope for all the people that listen to our show today that it's been of some benefit to mind, body, and soul for all of them. Okay. Going forward.
Oscar, ¿te vas a despedir?
Que tengan una feliz semana.
So my parting remarks to everybody, look in on the show tomorrow. It'll be available on YouTube, Facebook, Tribuna TV, and Vimeo. I guess the main parting comment I have is in reinventing ourselves, try to keep in mind that as bad as the COVID-19 pandemic is, we're stuck with it. So we need to cope. And how you cope can be positive or it can be negative. So I encourage you, please, choose the former. Make it positive, adaptive, healthy, proactive. We've given you a lot of food for thought and a lot of food in one of the photos. Please do the best you can to emerge positively from this. It will eventually get better for all of us, but in the meantime, focus on the good stuff. Me despido de todos. Buenas noches, Oscar. Thank you, Peter. Good night. My 40th show.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll be in my we'll make 18 years. As time flies. You probably could tell